We've got Steve, no pronouns given, calling in from Connecticut, says that faith is the only fair method to access God. Steve, you're on the Atheist Experience. How are you doing today?
Good. It's actually Dave. How are you?
I don't know why I see Steve, man. All right, Dave, I apologize. That must have been just a typo or something, got crossed some wires. So, Dave, you say that faith is the only fair method to access God. Will you please explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, first of all, it's a little bit from the Bible, but it's not technically something the Bible says, so yeah. But the reason why I say that is because people who aren't very smart, right, if God were to be basically, well, put it this way, God is invisible, and if he exists, it would take, and if, like with the Bible, that he has purposely hidden himself, that it's to the glory of kings to find out a matter, but for the glory of God to conceal a matter, and he wants that, it would be unfair to people who are smarter would actually potentially have a better access to him. They'd be able to know him through, let's say, scientific method and different things like that. And then they could convey their information to others, but instead this faith concept allows everybody, even though the smarter person might stumble about it, it would allow someone with Down syndrome all the way up to the most brilliant person a method of access to God, if he really does exist, which I do believe it. But I just wanted to bring that up only because it's a cool concept to me. In terms of me giving you evidence for my faith, I could try, but
I think you've given us plenty here, but we can get to that here in a minute.
Yeah.
Armin, do you want to start? Because I wrote down 3 questions immediately that I have major issues with, but I would love to hear your thoughts first.
I have 2 questions. What is faith? How do you define it? And second of all, do you care about your beliefs matching, being close to what is actually real? Do you actually care about that? Can you answer these 2 questions?
Can I answer them out of order? Is it okay to answer out of order?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So truth actually is higher than my Christian faith. So I'm very much open to anything that can to examine. So I'd love to examine that. However, faith.
I don't understand. I didn't understand what you just said. I didn't understand what that means. Do you care about your beliefs to be closer to reality, or do you not care about that? It's a yes or no question. Yes or no? Do you want to have beliefs that match reality?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yep.
And
that's very important.
Okay.
Yep.
And what? Okay, great. So what is faith?
I define. Yeah. So faith to me is So I've been wrestling with it, but faith to me, in the general sense, is basically a belief that's attached to a person, most often than not. So it's basically a subset of belief. That's one way I look at it. And then it's also a method of accessing truth that is not of the scientific type. So, for example, a wife, whether she's going to show up at home in 4 hours or whatever, is something that you, for a special occasion, that's something that would be more of a faith thing. So that's okay. I'm not giving
so you're
probably a very
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you're telling me that it's a set of beliefs, which the first one doesn't make any sense because, I mean, even if I use a scientific method to come up with a set of beliefs, would that also be faith? And then you clarify in the second part that using any method that is not the scientific method, you consider that to be faith. That it describes what what your methodology is not. You're saying your methodology is not science, but it's not explaining to me what it is. How, using this tool, how do I come up with a belief? Let's say I'm trying to evaluate whether this, when I want to pick up this belief as something that I believe in, or like you have a claim, I want to see if I want to believe in it or not. Using the methodology that you're introducing to us here, which you're calling faith, how would I go about doing that to examine a claim?
Yes. So, first of all, it's never going to be certain in your mind. It's going to be something in your heart, which is totally crazy, because I thought it was crazy for years.
Sounds crazy.
But
Literal heart, or are you using the word heart metaphorically, or like actual the pumping, the device that we have that pumps blood, that one, or metaphorical?
So first of all, can I go back to when you said belief and faith earlier?
I'd rather you just answer his question.
Actually, I'd rather go to the other thing, but if you say that,
it would be better if you just answered the question that was just asked of you.
Can you tell me why it would be better?
Because it's our show and you were asked a question. You called in and to defend your arguments, to defend your faith. We're asking questions about what you said. If you just don't answer the question and move on to something else, we're not having an actual conversation. So you said something that didn't make any sense. We're asking for clarification. So please answer what Armin just asked you.
Okay. So let me make sure I got the question right. How does this method allow you to test a truth? Is that close enough?
Nope.
Okay. No. You have a claim. No. We have a method called the scientific method. So the scientific method, we have clear explanations for, if we have a claim, what would the scientific method do to go evaluate whether this claim is true or not, or give it a probability. So you have another method that you're introducing to us here. You call it faith. So now we have a claim. Can you introduce to us, with your methodology, how would we go about to decide whether if we want to accept this claim as a belief that we have or not, using your methodology? How would we go about doing that?
Okay. So I'll give you kind of the Christian way, because that's what I know, kind of how Jesus outlined it. His outline was basically, if you are willing to do what God asks. Now, I know this, it doesn't make sense because, okay, if you're willing to apply the things of Christianity, you will know whether it's true or not. Now, so it's one of those things where kind of like, it can't be explained, and we could go through it in all other ways, but I think the reason I wanted to go back to the previous question is just because there is a very difference between belief and faith. Scientific belief.
We don't even know.
We don't even know what faith works. Like that's.
We don't even know what it is. And if go on.
You said just a second ago it can't be explained.
You will not.
I think I understand what you mean by faith from what you're saying, and from doing this show and shows like this for a long time. I think I understand where you're coming from. You said it can't be explained. Let's try testing it instead. Okay, because there's lots of things that are difficult to explain. Dark energy is difficult to explain, but we can test it. We can see it. You know what I mean? So let's run a test on this. I believe that there is a magical goblin living in my closet right over there. His name is Roland. He eats Subway sandwiches and he grants wishes. I have deep and sincere belief in this thing. I have undying faith of it. And the more that we have this relationship with Roland the goblin, the more that I work to try to benefit my relationship with Roland, the more that I do what Roland tells me to do, the more I believe it and the more it proves itself to be true to me. Do you believe that this is a reasonable thing that I believe in?
Actually, it might be.
It might be. So because I believe in it so much, it might be true.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, follow-up question: is there ever anything that is more true because someone believes in it a whole lot?
No, but if that thing does exist,
okay. So then what we're saying is, if it really does exist, we'd have a reason to believe in it. But what I just described and what you just described and what you just agreed to was, if I have belief in it, then it might exist. And that's backwards. It exists, so we believe in it. Not I believe in it, therefore it probably exists. That's wrong.
So if it exists and you access it through the means that this existence established to access it, and then you find yourself experiencing and finding things that are corroborating it, then you can comfortably say that it exists. Now, there's got to be one thing that's circular in life.
But that's a lot more than what you just agreed to a second ago. That's a lot more than what you just said.
So I didn't mean to agree to it.
What you said with your description of faith before and what I just described with Roll in the Closet Goblin was very different. What you said before and what I just described with Roll in the Closet Goblin is, I believe in this thing. Does that make it reasonable that it might actually exist? And that doesn't make any sense. The more you believe in a thing, that has no bearing on whether or not it's true. Whether or not you believe in it, whether or not it changes your life, whether or not it leads you out of addiction, whether or not it gives you purpose, whether or not it gives you comfort, whether or not it none of that matters. The only thing that matters is whether or not it's real, right?
So let me ask you, though.
Answer that question, please.
Even
is the only thing that matters whether or not it's real, or does how much you believe in it actually matter?
It matters whether it's real, and the way that God set up things, if he did, according to Christian scripture, is that he made it that man can't know him through wisdom, and he did it.
Well, we'll get there, because that's a whole other conversation that I want to have with you. We will get to that, I promise you. But I'm asking you right now,
okay,
does it matter when you're talking about whether or not something is real? Does it matter whether it's real, or does it matter whether you believe in it? What actually is most important to whether or not something is real?
Actually, both. You will never access anything unless you believe there's a reason to believe it. So
I'm not talking about accessing it. I'm talking about whether or not it's real. Jupiter exists. Before people knew Jupiter existed, it still existed. It was still there before anybody knew it was there. And then we found it was there, and now we both believe it's there, and also it's still there. So whether or not we believed in it had no bearing on whether or not it was there, right?
Yes, definitely.
So whether or not we believe in God has no bearing on whether or not God is there, right?
Absolutely, but...
Perfect. So then let's talk about how we actually know that God is there, because just believing in it isn't good enough. And what you're describing with this faith, that you have to just start believing it and have these special connections and all these things. My next question to you, is there anything at all that you could not believe in based on your methodology?
Anything at all that you could not believe in based on my methodology?
Using faith, no, is there anything that you couldn't believe in?
Yeah, I just said no, you could believe in anything.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So then is faith a reliable way to find out what is and is not true?
Absolutely.
Okay. Square that circle for me. I can believe in anything based on faith, and yet I know faith is a reliable way to know what's true. How do those two statements make sense together?
It does make sense in some subsets of our reality. Okay.
No, it does not.
So, for example,
okay, maybe I could.
Okay,
Dave, maybe Dave, I think I might understand what you're trying to say here, and I will describe it to you, and let me know if I am getting it right or not. Does that help? Is that okay, Dave?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, so I think what you're suggesting is a leap that we have to make at the beginning and believe in something, and once you accept it, then you will be given access to a new realm that it will prove to you that that leap was justified at the beginning. Once you go through the first barrier and you enter this new uh, territory, now you're within. If you just trust that this is true, then God will do more things for you to reveal that it was okay for you to just trust Him at the beginning. Is that kind of what you're suggesting?
Right.
A leap? Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm not. I'd have to actually. I'd have to listen to that several times to make sure that I'm actually not kind of saying something I'm not saying. But from the first suggestion, yes, it's kind of like a water pump. You have the directions that say pump this 3 times and then water will start flowing. Okay, so
Right.
When you first look at it, you have no idea what's under the ground. You don't know the science of it. You have nothing besides the directions. If you're a person who's never seen one of these before, but you do know how to read, you read it, you start pumping. Oh, okay, this is great. There really is
Right.
water. So yes, yep.
Okay, so here's the problem. The example that you gave us is kind of like more like the scientific method. You test something and then you see what the results are like. But this is not
Right.
the analogy you're giving to us is not the same, because the problem with leap of faith, like
And
believing
it's not.
something
No
and then seeing
analogy
what
is the same.
I know, but
No
I
analogy.
know no analogy is the same.
It's just trying.
I know, but this is not the same. I know, I understand that, but this is different in a way that is crucial, that it makes it a false analogy. I know not all analogies are exactly the same, but this is different in a way that makes it not helpful. Because with the example that you're giving, because you have accepted something as true, then your mind is set for being accepting. It's set for being brainwashed. The example that you're giving, that you're pumping something and you're seeing what happens, you haven't accepted the result already. You haven't primed your mind to now accept everything else that is being fed. But what you're suggesting to us is to just open a door and go inside this room. But once you're inside this room, now it's going to be difficult to get out. Unlike the example that you gave us, that you just test the pump and see what happens. Well, if it doesn't work, you're like, okay, that didn't work. But this is what you're suggesting to us is basically cultish brainwashing, to just accept something. This is more like the example I gave you. It's kind of like a prison that you're asking somebody to just open the door, don't ask any questions, go inside. But once you're inside, because your mind has now accepted something, because you were asked to believe the results, not to test if something works or not, but to accept that the results will work. And now, because you have said yes to that question, now it's hard to get out of it. This is why this is more unlike the scientific method that you test something and see what the results are. The religious method is to accept the results first and then see what happens later. This is cultish brainwashing.
I was going to say almost like I love that you brought that up, because like one of the things I was going to point out is your analogy of a water pump, that you have to just pump it a few times and then it'll start flowing by itself. That if you just start believing, then more and more belief will come. You just described confirmation bias. You just gave a brilliant explanation of how confirmation bias works in the brain, and how if I choose to believe that most cars are red and I start going out and looking for red cars, the more I keep looking for them, the more I'll keep seeing them, until eventually I am solid in my belief that most cars are red. When at the end of the day, that's not how thinking works. That's not how actual science works. We need to go count all the cars and figure out what's actually there. But the more you look for one color, the more you'll see that color and the more you'll believe it. And that is exactly what you're describing. And that is a terrible way to figure out whether something is true or not. it circles back to what you said a minute ago. Of course, you can believe absolutely anything with faith, but also I know faith is a good way to know something. Like what you're describing here makes no sense, Dave.
Yeah, okay, that's fine if you feel that.
It's not a feeling.
What about a wife? What about a wife? Tell me if that's a better example. A wife.
What about
a voice?
So, what about a wife? Okay, you obviously, science, you can kind of, it's not maybe the most reliable method, but yeah, you observe your wife over.
It is the most reliable.
When you're dating, a year's time. What's that?
Science is the most reliable tool that we have right now for figuring out what is true. Can you hear us, Dave?
It is, and that's great. It is the most reliable method, but some people don't want to wait till every single molecule is understood before they take a step of faith in another area. And so, in reality, your belief is kind of this expectation that science will march on and never reveal that there was something. Well, you might believe that something created you, but this concept of supernatural is very baffling.
Dave, it seems like you are uncomfortable for not having answers to certain questions, and the fact that science cannot have answers to all the questions for us is unsettling, and you want to find a different methodology that fills up these gaps, right?
Well, how about this?
You could just answer the question. Again, you could just answer the question.
Well, okay, so the question was, do I care about whether that, okay.
Were you listening to the question, or were you just waiting for your turn to talk?
Yeah. No, I like having answers to gaps, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that it's actually probably wise to not only base life off of what is known scientifically, or even historically, or even any of the kind of more logic-based methods.
Why is that a good thing? If we don't have answers to certain questions,
it's not either good or bad.
Why is it? Well, I would say it's bad. Why would we give people answers that we have no way to show that it's true, just to give them some answers? It is bad. It makes the world a worse place. If people have beliefs out there that we don't have any way to verify that it's true, then that's dangerous for individuals and for the society. It makes progress slower. It causes poverty. It causes war. It causes a whole bunch of misery. If we have beliefs that are closer, that match reality closer than random beliefs that come out of methods like what you're describing, like faith or revelation or voices that we hear in our head, if we go with these random results, then we are slowing down progress. Then we are responsible for increased misery in the world. A society of people progress faster when they have beliefs that matches closer to the reality, and you are hindering that. You're slowing that down. People who are advocating for that are responsible for the extra misery or slower progress, a much longer path to getting people out of a lot of issues that we're having, out of war, out of misery, out of not having access to healthcare, out of hunger, out of having cures for diseases. Imagine all the lost opportunities that this world is missing out on because people are accepting beliefs that they just randomly believed in with flawed methodologies like the ones that you're explaining to us right now.
Yeah, so I think a lot of what you're saying is actually great extrapolation. The reason why I say that is because, first of all, if there is a God, the peace of knowing him, the joy of knowing him, the things that I've accessed from this wonderful experience with God is unbelievable. You can choose to say, just dismiss what I'm saying. It's no big deal. But it is the method that Christianity proposes. and something in this life at the end of the day has to be somewhat circular. There's so much that,
Not really.
you know,
Doesn't have to be.
if
Doesn't have to
something
be.
needs to be linear, then it doesn't have to be. So I would love to explore more of this, but I'm not going to wait the rest of my life to let scientific work do its thing. Peace in the soul is actually more important than anything. Not saying you can't have that, but what I have gained, I want other people to enjoy. If they don't want it, that's fine. No,
Dave, let me ask you a question. I'm going to try just something totally different here, because like it's very clear that you and the two of us have a very different understanding of what science is and what belief is and things like that. And we can beat this dead horse for all day long, but I think I would rather try something just different. I
know what science is very clearly. I just think science can only access a portion of reality. So I say again, I think we have very different thoughts on how science works, but that's not the point. I would like to ask you something very different. You just talked about the peace and joy that you get from knowing God. I'm assuming, just because of your accent and where you're calling from and everything, that you're probably a Christian. Is that accurate to say? Yes, definitely. Yep.
Okay. So what's the other side of that coin? If you don't know God, you don't get the peace and the joy. What happens when you don't believe in God and you die? What happens to you?
What happens if you don't believe in God? Okay, so
I know the answer because I've been told the answer most days of my life since I was a little child.
Of course. Yes, and what's wrong with that? Why is that not true?
So we're talking about hell, right? You go to hell.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So here's my question for you then.
Want someone to enter in. Yep.
At the beginning of this call, you said that this is the way God wants it, that God wants to hide. God wants to be something that you have to like dig to access. And that's why faith is so important, because otherwise people who aren't smart enough to dig wouldn't know him. Quick question. If God loves us and all that, why would he want to hide if the consequence of not knowing him is hellfire? Why would he want to trick us to think that he isn't real and force us to try weird, uncomfortable ways to try to find him and know him, when the consequence of getting that wrong is burning for eternity in a lake of fire and brimstone?
Okay. I'll give you the biblical reason why he makes it kind of hard for the smarter person.
That's not what I asked.
Piss you off, but it might kind of like it.
That's not what I asked.
The reason that the Bible gives it, the reason why the Bible gives why he does it, is that so no man can boast.
That's not what I asked. What I asked you was, why is God hiding himself when the consequence of being hidden is that we burn in hell? Why is that what he's allowing to be? If I, for example, if I was a medical doctor and here's a bunch of people that are very sick, but I hide behind a tree, and if they come find me, I'll heal them. But if not, they die of whatever cancer they have. Does that make me a good doctor? Is that a good thing to do? Here's God with all of us, and he's hiding. And if we find him, we get to go to heaven. But if we don't, because he's fucking hiding, then we go to hell. Why would he do something that stupid is the question.
Why would he do something that's stupid? Okay, so let me think. So one of the things is that, first of all, it's not stupid. And here, I don't have an answer right now. I'll be honest with you. No, I'm not shocked. There's plenty of answers.
I didn't say shocked.
First of all, I actually did talk. Oh, shocked. So, okay. So why would God hide himself?
Yes.
Well, first of all, it says that he hides himself more or less from the wise, right? So he hasn't hidden himself to someone who has a humble heart, someone who knows that We don't really understand the entirety of the universe. Someone who understands that if there is a God, he's given us a lot. He's given us a lot. We have 1 million. He's given us body
a lot.
Facilitates our lives.
I'm just going to stop you right there, Dave. And I hope you don't think that I'm being rude. I just don't want to hear a sermon right now. I don't think God's given us a lot. Or I do think he's given us. I think he's given a lot of suffering and misery and pain that it isn't necessary. But that's not any part of the question that I just asked you. Do you believe that I exist, Dave? Do you think that I'm real?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
How do you know I'm real, Dave?
You don't want to be with.
How do you know I'm real?
Yeah. So basically,
How is that a hard question? How do you know that I'm real, Dave?
I hear your voice.
Yeah, because I'm right here talking to you, right? You can look on the computer screen and see me.
Yeah.
You can listen to my voice. I'm plainly right in front of you, and I'm plainly right in front of about 1,000 other people, right? So all of us can clearly see me, right? So now, if I were to ask all of these people, and you included, hey, am I real? You would have a good reason to say yes. And there's no torture on the line, right? There's no torture on the line for you deciding that I'm not real. So here we have God, who says, if you don't believe I'm real, I'll torture you in fire forever. And he doesn't have the fucking common courtesy to at least pick up a phone and be like, yo, I'm real. I got a whole camera set up and shit here for people that don't have anything to lose from not knowing me. I'm doing the common courtesy of letting them know that I exist. And God can't do that much when hell awaits if we don't believe it? What kind of cruel, stupid, ignorant person would do something like that? That's an insanely mean, dumb thing to do.
So he hasn't done enough. He hasn't done enough.
God, no, he is not.
Has he given you?
He hasn't done anything.
He
hasn't done literally anything.
What would be enough? He hasn't done anything.
Try showing up.
Okay.
If God appeared before me at this very moment and provided me, because I'll be honest with you, I couldn't tell you what sufficient evidence for believing in a God would actually look like, because it's hard to rule out like aliens and magic and shit. Like there could be a lot of other, right? It could be weird. Right. But if God's all knowing, if God's all knowing, God knows exactly what it would take to convince me. God knows my heart and my mind. He knows exactly what it would take to convert me immediately. And if that happened, I would be right here on this show saying God is real. And then I would still continue to say that he's an asshole and there's no reason to worship him. I'm an anti-theist, not just an atheist. Right. But I would be saying that he's definitely real. So like, and there's so many people, Dave, there's so many people that have humbly and honestly asked for God, that believed in God with all their heart for years and years, that were training to become preachers and ministers, that believed wholeheartedly in this God, that lost their faith just for looking for evidence, looking for answers, trying to ask questions. Like, you can't just say you're not the right kind of person to not be shown God. If God actually wanted to save our souls, he would fucking show up and give us an actual choice. But instead, he leaves us with faith. And that's not good enough.
Yeah, first, actually, I did that.
Yes.
I used to cry to God. And when I was losing my faith, I was like, God, I don't want to lose you. You're my only friend. You're the only one I have. I am alone. I am nothing without you. But I am, every day I think about you. I think you are making less and less sense to me. Please. And I was honest. I was sincere. I was tearful. I was like, if you're there, because I know you're right now, I know you're there. So please send me anything, a message, a voice, a miracle, anything. I told him, I'm begging you, if I go down this route, I'm going to lose you. Please send something to me. And now I'm an atheist, so that didn't work out.
Right?
Yeah.
And hell awaits because you used your brain.
No. So that answer will be answered. It's just a little bit delayed.
What a shitty thing to delay.
Really want to have God in your life? Well, you know, so delays are not always bad. Delays are not always bad. We think they are, but they aren't.
One last
because
Dave,
of that delay, my mother died as an atheist. Because if that delay makes sense, my mother would believed in God, and through me, she became an atheist and she died. So that delay does not make any sense because of that delay, if there is a God, she's now being tortured in hell.
So, do you know that your atheism is right?
that I would love for you to address what was just said to you rather than jump into the next thing.
You're a master at switching, at pivoting, Dave.
Armin, do you have anything else for Dave? Because we've been on this call for over 30 minutes, and like Dave refuses to actually answer one thing. Dave, just really quickly before we wrap up, any God that would have a hell, period, is a monster. Any God that would torture people for any, like, just at all, especially if we're supposedly his children that he chooses to love and all these things, that God is evil. And especially if that God makes you play parlor tricks in your mind to believe whatever random fairy tale you want to believe. And that's the only thing that separates you from the people that get eternity in a theme park in the sky and the people that get eternity in a lake of fire. That God's insane and stupid. So I want to really read it at that, because it seemed like you didn't understand what I meant by stupid. That's a stupid thing to do. It's cruel, it's unjustifiable, and it's stupid. So if you have a real reason to believe in it and you want to call in and talk to us about a real reason and have an actual conversation about it, I'd love to have you call back in. But as it is right now, all you've given us is anything can be believed based on faith, and yet faith is the only way to believe in this one specific particular thing. And if you don't believe in this one thing using the method that you can believe in absolutely anything with, then you go to hell forever. And that sounds like a pile of shit to me. I'm really not interested in that God or that religion. Does that make sense, Dave?
Yeah, if you want to go that way, but I do appreciate it all. I thank you. I didn't base everything based on faith, but a large portion of it is faith. And all right, thank you.
And that's a significant problem for us, Dave. So call back in when you want to have a real conversation about it. Thanks so much for calling in and giving us the time that you did.